I'm just gonna be reading today because I thought that'd be nice. I don't know. I'm gonna wait a second before I start. Um, I don't usually read out loud, so hopefully I don't stutter or anything. That's my hope. Um, think I'm gonna wait until at least one person enters the chat, and then we can begin. Um, What we're gonna be reading is the beginning of Everything by Snyder. So, I'm actually really excited to read this. So, I just go ahead and just get started. So let's begin. Okay, the beginning of everything. Everyone gets a tragedy. Snyder. I still think that everyone's life, no matter how unremarkable, has a singular tragic encounter, after which everything that really matters will happen. That moment is the catalyst, the first step in the equation, but knowing the first step will get you nowhere. It's what comes after that determines the results. Who was I in the aftermath of my personal tragedy? Okay. This book has been reviewed by Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway with good reviews, so I'm very excited. Okay, Chapter 1. Sometimes I think that everyone has a tragedy waiting for them, that the people buying milk in their pajamas or picking their nose at stoplights could be only moments away from disaster, that everyone's life, no matter how unremarkable, has a moment when it will become extraordinary, a single encounter after which everything that really matters will happen. My friend Toby came down with a bad case of tragedy the week before we started 6th grade at Westlake Middle School. We were fanatical about ping pong that summer, playing it barefoot in his backyard with aspirations towards some sort of world championship. I was a better player. I totally mumbled that. I was a better player because my parents had forced me into private tennis lessons ever since I'd been giving my own fork at the dinner table. Sometimes, out of a sense of friendship, I let Toby win. It was a game for me, figure out how to lose just convincingly enough that he wouldn't figure I was doing it on purpose. And so while he practiced for the mythical ping pong world championship, I practiced a quiet, well-meaning type of anarchy toward my father's conviction that winning was what mattered in life. Even though Toby and I were the kind of best friends who rarely sought the company of other boys our age, his mother insisted on a birthday party, perhaps to ensure his popularity in middle school, a popularity we had not enjoyed in elementary school. She sent out Pirates of the Caribbean themed invitations to half a dozen kids in our year, with whom Toby and I showed a collective disinterest in socializing. And she took us all to Disneyland, the world's filthiest burgundy minivan, last Tuesday of the summer. We lived only 20 minutes drive south of Disneyland, and the magic of the place was well worn off by the end of the 6th grade. We knew exactly which rides were good and which were a waste of time. When Miss Ellicott suggested a visit to the enchanted Cheeky Room, the idea was met with such a collective decision that you would have thought she would told us to get lunch from the Pizza Port Salad Bar. In the end, the first and only ride we went on was the Thunder Mountain Railroad. Toby and I chose the back row of the roller coaster, which everyone knows is the fastest. The rest of the birthday party was fighting for the front row because even though the back is faster, the front is explicitly more popular. And so Toby and I ran up divided from the rest of the party by a sea of eager Disneyland guests. I suppose I remember that day with such enormous clarity because of what happened. Do you know those signs they have in the lines of the theme parks with those thick black lines where you have to be at least that tall to ride? Those signs also have a lot of super warnings about how pregnant ladies or people with heart conditions shouldn't go on roller coasters, and you have to stow your backpacks, and everyone must be seated at all times. Well, it turns out those signs aren't too useless after all. There was this family directly in front of us, Japanese tourists with Mickey Mouse hats that had their names embroidered on the backs. As Toby and I sat there with the wind in our face and the roller coaster rubbing so loudly over the rickety tracks they could barely hear yourself scream, one of the boys in front of us stood up defiantly in his seat. He was laughing, holding the Mickey Mouse back onto his head when the coaster raced into a low singlage tunnel. The news report said that a 14-year-old from Japan was decapitated on the Thunder Mountain Railroad when he discarded the post of safety warning. What the news reports don't say is how the kid hailed so backwards in its master had like some pro-cheats helicopter, and how Toby Ellicott, on his 12th birthday, caught the severed head and held onto it in shock for the duration of the ride. Oh, that is horrible. I feel like that's horrible. Okay, let's continue. Hopefully that's feeling less gross. There's no grateful way to recover from something like that. No magical response to the getting head jokes that everyone turned Toby's direction in the hallways of Rustlake Middle School. Toby's tragedy was the seat he chose on the roller coaster ride on his 12th birthday, and ever since he has lived in the shadow of what happened. It could have easily been me if our sweet seats had been reversed, or the kid in front of us had swapped places in the line at the last minute. The head could have been my undoing rather than Toby's. I thought about it sometimes as we drifted apart over the years, as Toby faded into obscurity and I became an incomparable social success. Throughout middle school, high school, my succession of girlfriends with laughing, wrinkled noses. Didn't you used to be friends with that kid, they asked? You know, the one who caught the severed head on the Disneyland ride? We're still friends, I'd say, but that wasn't really true. We were still friendly enough and we chatted online, but our friendship had somehow been decapitated that summer. Like the kid who sat in front of us on that fateful roller coaster, there was no weight on my shoulders. Sorry, that was horrible of me, but honestly, it's been long enough since the second grade that the whole thing feels like a horrifying story I once heard, because that tragedy belongs to Toby, and he has lived methodically in its aftermath while I escaped relatively unscathed. My own tragedy held out. It waited to strike until I was so used to my good enough life in an acceptable suburb that I had stopped waiting for anything interesting to happen, which is why when my personal tragedy finally found me, it was nearly too late. I had just turned 17, was embarrassingly popular, earned good grades, and was trying to become internally and extraordinary. Jonas Baedeker was a guy I knew peripherally, the same way you know if there's someone sitting in the desk next to you or who's van in the left lane. He was on my radar, but barely. It was his party, a house in Northlake with a backyard gazebo full of six-packs and hard lemonade. There were tangles of Christmas lights strung across the yard, and even though it was prime weekend, they shimmered in reflection of the murky lake water. The street was haphazard with cars, and I parked all the way on Windhawk, 2 blocks over, because I was paranoid about getting a ding. My girlfriend Charlotte and I had been fighting that afternoon on the courts after off-season tennis. She'd accused me, let me see if I can get the phrasing correct, of shrieking class presidential responsibilities in regard to the junior-senior law. She said it in this particularly stronger way, as though I should have been slammed, as though her predicted failure of the annual junior-senior law would galvanize me into calling an emergency SGA meeting that very second. I was dripping sweat and choking Gatorade when she'd sauntered into the court in a strapless dress. She'd been hiding beneath a cardigan all day, and mostly as she talked, I thought... I'm sorry, I thought about how sexy her bent shoulders looked. I suppose I just her favorite when she told me that I suck sometimes, and that she was going to join this party with her friend Jill because she couldn't deal with me when I was being impossible. Isn't that the definition of impossible? I asked, whipping Gatorade off my chin. Wrong answer. Achieving one of those little screams that was sort of a growl and flounced away, which is why I showed up to the party late and still wearing my mesh tennis shorts because I knew it would antagonize her. I pocketed my key lanyard and nodded hey to a bunch of people because I was the junior class president and also the captain of our tennis team. It felt like I was constantly nodding hello to people wherever I went, as though life was a stage and I was but a poor tennis player. Sorry, puns. Sort of my thing, but it puts people at ease, being able to collectively roll their eyes at the guy in charge. I grabbed a solar cup. I didn't plan on drinking from and joined the guys from the tennis in the backyard. It was the usual crew, and they were all well on their way to being wasted. They greeted me far too fantastically, and I endured their back slapping with a good-natured grimace before sitting down on a proof pull chair. Faulkner, you gotta see this, Evan called, wobbling drunkenly as he stood on top of a planter. He was clutching an electric green pool noodle, trying to give it some heft. While Jimmy knelt on the ground, holding the other end to his face, they were attempting to make a beer funnel out of a foam pool noodle, which should give you an idea how needlessly drunk they were. Pour it already, Jimmy complained, and the rest of the guys pounded on the patio furniture, drum rolling. I got up and officiated the event because that was what I did, officiate things. So I stood there with my solo cup, making some sarcastic speech about how this was one for the Guinness Book of World Records, only because we were drinking Guinness. It was like 100 other parties and 100 other stupid stunts that never worked, but at least kept everyone ever entertained. The pool funnel particularly failed, with Jimmy and even Evan blaming each other, making up ridiculous excuses that had nothing to do with the glaringly poor physique of their whole setup. The concert turned to the prom after party. A bunch of us were going in on a suit at the Four Seasons, but I was only half listening. This was one of the last springs before being seniors, and I was thinking about what that meant, about how these rituals of prom, allow, and graduation that we'd watched for years were suddenly personal. It was slightly cold out. And the girls shivered in their dresses. A couple of tennis team girlfriends came over, sat down on their boyfriends' laps. They had phoned their friends out the way girls do at parties, creating little halos of light cupped around their hands. Where's Charlotte? One of the girls asked, and it took me a while to realize this question was directed toward me. Hello, Ezra? Sorry, I said, running my hand from my hair. Isn't she with Jill? No, she isn't, the girl said. Jill's completely grounded. She had like this portfolio on a modeling website, and her parents found it and went crazy because they mistakenly thought it was porn. A couple of guys perked up at the mention of porn, and Jimmy made an obscene gesture of the pool noodle. How can you mistakenly think something is porn? I asked. How way it should have this turn. It's porn if you use a self-timer, she explained, as she thought it was obvious. Right, I said, wishing she'd been smarter, and that her answer impressed me. Everyone laughed and began to joke up porn, but now that I thought about it, I had no idea where Charlotte had gone. I'd assumed I was meeting her at the party, that she was doing what she usually did when we had one of the fights, hanging out with Jill, rolling her eyes at me, and acting going for me from across the room, until I went over and apologized profusely. But I hadn't seen her all night. I pulled out my phone and texted her to see what was going on. 5 minutes later, she still hadn't replied when Hef, an enormous senior from the pool, started over to our table. He stacked his solar cups and had about 6 of them. I suppose he meant it to be impressive, but it must be hating as wasteful. Faulkner, he grunted. Yeah, I said. Told me to get up, and I shrugged and I followed him over the little slope of dirt near the lake. You should go upstairs, he said, for such a solemnity that I didn't question it. Again, this house was large, probably 6 bedrooms if I had to guess. But luck, if you call that, was on my mind. My prize was behind door number 1. Charlotte, some guy I didn't know, in a scene which, if I had captured via camera phone, could have mistaken for one. Although that wouldn't have been my artistic intention. I cleared my throat, and Charlotte cleared hers. Though this required a bit of effort on her part, she looked nearly horrified to see me in the door. Neither of us said anything, and this kind of sympathy said, "What the hell?" Ezra, Charlotte babbled. I didn't think you were coming. I think he was about to, I murmured sourly. No one laughed. Who's this? The guy demanded, looking back and forth between Charlotte and me. He didn't go to our school, and he gave the impression of being old, a college kid, something out of high school party. I'm the boyfriend, I said, but it came out uncertain, like a question. This is the guy, he asked me, squinting at me. I could take him. So she'd been talking about me to this dude's canoodle. I suppose if it came down to it, he probably could take me. I had a hell of a backhand, but only with my racket on my fist. How about you take her instead, I suggested, and then I turned away and walked back down the hallway. It might have been fine if Charlotte hadn't come after me, saying that I still had to take her to prom. It might have been all right if she hadn't proceeded to do so in the middle of a crowded room. It might have been different if I hadn't babied my car, parking all the way over there. When Huck before the scourge of drunk drivers, maybe one of the things didn't happen. I would have inched out to the curve of Princeton Boulevard at exactly a black SUV barreled around the blind turn and blew through the stop sign. I don't know why people say hit by a car as though the other vehicle physically lashes out on some sort of champion boxer. What hit me first was my airbag, and then my steering wheel, and I suppose the driver's side door, whatever the part is called that your knee jams up against. The impact was deafening, and nothing just seemed to slam toward me and crunch. There was a stink of engine dying under the front head like burnt rubber, but salty and metallic. Everyone rushed out onto the Beddego's lawn, which was 2 houses down, and through the engine smoke I could see an army of girls in strapless dresses, their fronts raised, slowly sending pictures of wreck. But I just sat there laughing and scared because I'm immortal, an 100-year-old vampire. Oh, I'm screwing you, because it would have been awesome if I didn't shake it off and drive away. But that ass weasel who never stopped after laying into my Z4. If the whole petting hadn't cleared out into a panic before the cops could bust in for underaging, it's Charlotte or just one of my supposed friends staying behind to ride with me in the ambulance, instead of leaving me there alone, half a years from the pain, if my mother hadn't put on all her best red and gotten lipstick on her teeth before rushing to the emergency room. It's awful, isn't it? I remember crap like that, tiny insignificant details in the midst of a massive disaster. I don't really want to get into the rest of it, and I hope you'll forgive me, but it was once enough. My poor roadster was total, and just like everything else in my life, the doctor said my wrist would heal, but the damage to my leg was bad. My knee had been imperially shattered. This isn't about Toby's 1240 or the Krautwerk at Jonah's party, not really. This is the type of problem in organic chemistry called a retrocephanesis. You're presented with a compound that does not occur in nature. Your job is to work backwards step by step and ascertain how it came to exist. What sort of conditions led to its eventual creation. When you are finally finished, if done correctly, the equation can be run normally, making it possible to distinguish the equation from the answer. I still think that everyone's life, no matter how unremarkable, has a singular tragic encounter, after which everything that really matters will happen. That moment is catalyst. At first, it's an equation, but knowing the first step will get you nowhere. It's what comes after that determines the result. Okay, we just finished chapter 1, and so I think we're gonna end it here. We most definitely will read more another time, but I have been reading for a good amount of time, so I'm gonna end it here. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and so bye bye.